All right, everybody, it's episode 23 here on the LLPW podcast here on Red Leaf Retrocast Patreon. Guys, biggest show in 1994. July 14th, 1994 at the Tokyo Coliseum, now known as the Ariake Coliseum. It's a place that holds about 10,000 on a good day, on a full day. But for a wrestling show, we'll put it at about 8,000 to 9,000 people. Okay? This is one of the biggest shows LLPW would ever do in the heat and hotness of the joshi era. And I got some nice, very nice Colombian rum here. I'm pouring this sucker hard for this show. Oh my god. Okay. So twofold things happen here. First off, I've been really hot for this. Because on the Joshi 2010s journey, here on the Red Leaf Retrocast Patreon, we did the Bull Nakano official retirement show number of episodes ago. And one of those matches in the Bull Nakano retirement show was a very reminiscent... Hold on. Step back. What the Bull Nakano retirement show was a celebration of her career in her greatest moments. And one of those greatest moments was from this show. It was the chain match between her and Shinobu Kandori. I had never seen this match prior to this episode. I didn't know the context of it until doing these LLPW episodes and going on the AJW Classics journey. I really didn't know a lot about it. And after a round of golf, and now here, drinking some rum, I'm very excited to have the full extent and hopefully knowledge of what led into this show. And what's interesting to me is coming out of this, I understand why the show didn't get a lot of hype. What I don't understand is the match of Shinobu Kandori and Bull Nakano. In AJW and a good part of JWP history are these huge crossover matches and things brought with critical acclaim. And I do believe a lot of it has to do, at least in the Western sense of the terms, Dave Meltzer in the 90s. You look at Wrestling Data, you look at Cage Match, you look at Scott Blog of Doom, you look at all these reminiscent cases and coverage of the era and even after the era. This match seems to be lost in time. However, from Weekly Pro and various other Japanese magazines, this match got a lot of coverage. It got a lot of publicity at the time. Now, out of the time, so by the end of the year, and years after, this match was quickly forgotten about from various factors, and it's very obvious. The Tokyo Dome show that AJW ran, the essentially end of an era for AJW, at least at its peak, along with all the other promotions that was starting. And we're going to get to one thing in particular that really took a lot of buzz away from the continuing conversation that was coming out of this match. So yes, they ran Ariake Coliseum, the Tokyo Coliseum. 8,300 people sold out. Okay? You look at the show, it was completely filled. Very successful in terms of LLPW. And it was billed as an LLPW huge interpromotional crossover show between FMW and AJW, the two promotions that LLPW has been heavily involved with in storylines and house show angles and the like. JWP, for obvious reasons, they're split and not quite getting along, and Kandori and the company involved, they don't really want to work together, and they haven't. Okay? But are they doing business to the best they can with the partners that are available? They're crossing over with Wrestling and Romance. They're showing up on those shows, getting some reps in between their biggest stars, and maybe crossing over with a crowd that might be interested in their style. It's a very different era, so we have to realize this. And when it comes to terms with FMW and AJW, FMW is willing to play ball under certain circumstances. You know, they don't want Megumi Kudo losing to Eagle Sawai every week. AJW, all right, we're willing to play ball, but as we saw in their last big crossover show in '93, and it's no secret why they haven't run another show until July of '94, that AJW wants to go over. They are the predominant force in the scene right now. But what does that really benefit LLPW for? Well, it's shows like this. It is shows like this. And attendance-wise, and I would say buzz-wise, and I will get into another important aspect of why this show perhaps could have done even better, honestly enough. This was a great success for a show I think missed the mark. But the main event was so good and successful that it doesn't matter. And let me tell you guys, as I take a sip of my rum here. Colombian rum. My God. That's good stuff. Ron Viejo de Caldas. Age 3 years. Sure. Look, guys. You could have possibly the shittiest product in your under and mid card. If your main event fucking delivers to so many wrestling fans, when you leave at the end of the day, and you leave that club, that venue, that arena, with 8,000 people going, fuck, that was awesome. That's a success. That's a successful company. Your main event has to deliver every single time. What the under and mid card does, time and time again, is it amplifies the show. It amplifies. It emphasizes. That's what it gears you up for what you want to see. I will not sit here and pretend that I watched this July 14th, 1994 LLPW show and thought this was a banger show until that main event. I was very bored and very disappointed. And I sat through it, and with all the context of the show leading in, this was incredibly disappointing. However, when I left at that final bell and saw Shinobu Kandori getting carried out, holding her face like she had gone through 8 rounds against Muhammad Ali, I went, this fucking show is saved. I love this shit. This is possibly the greatest LLPW show I've ever seen. That is the difference. Right there. And it brings about another conversation I want to have about Shinobu Kandori. We're going to do that at the main event. Okay? This is the Red Leaf Retrocast LLPW Patreon episode. Here we go. Sold out show, Tokyo Coliseum. Holds 10,000. Let's go. Michiko Omakai defeats Chaprita Asari in the opener. This was totally acceptable and fine. Okay? Asari is incredibly over in her inflatable knee pads and shoulder gear that she has, that she looks like she's ready to go into a bouncy castle at any moment. Michiko Omakai is one of the most over acts in LLPW with her journey up to the top. If you want to make a modern comparison between Omakai and Nagashima, They are the closest things I can compare right now to the Waka Tsukiyama story and the Mirai story in modern day Stardom in 2023. On one hand, we have a rookie that can't win, and she's a number of years into her career. She gets her first big win here. Big win. Because beating an AJW wrestler is no small feat. And then later on the card, Nagashima, with her connection to the Yasha Kurenai group, being a little bit of a rebel. Not so much in the same realm of Mirai, but someone who has definitely been taken down a notch, and she's been really trying to break through some sort of glass ceiling. Now, I know Mirai has won the Cinderella tournament, but she's also gone through a lot of losses since then. Nagashima has her big win, but she's gone on a lot of losses. And then in the early to mid-90s, it's a very different sense of storytelling and different expectations that we have for wrestlers. Okay? So Omakai defeats Asari in the opener, which was very okay. In the second match, it's Futagami and Endo defeating Ri Tamada and Tomoko Watanabe. And let me tell you something here. Ri Tamada is athletic. She's a little bit smaller than everybody else, especially when you compare her to, say, Etsuko Mita the Giant. Tomoko Watanabe, as athletic as she is, you can tell she's not hitting the dumbbells very often. Okay? But Ri Tamada, when she's hitting those drop kicks in Futagami's face, we got something. Okay? I know this is an LLPW podcast, but the AJW wrestler comes out stronger, despite the loss. You see, like, I see what they see in Endo. Okay? Mizuki Endo. She looked terrible when we started this journey. Not a good wrestler, always in the wrong place, not very athletic. But what does she have? It's size and power. And those kinds of people will get bigger and better chances. And Endo is completely always on that end of, let's put her in prominent spots and hope she gets better. We have the 6-man tag. Midori, Nagashima, Kazuma. Defeating Miwasato, Nurse Nakamura, and Yuki Nabeno. Oh my god. If you are listening to the AJW Destiny podcast episodes or the AJW Classic episodes over on RLR proper, Yuki Nabeno is now a thing of legend. She is unathletic, unappealing, ungood in the ring. And yet, when she's in this match, in this 6-person tag, FMW versus LLPW, you're like waiting for her to fuck up. You really are. And yet, Miwasato and Nakamura, they held their own, and Nabeno was in there to just kind of hit some key moves and move along, right? Midori, Nagashima, and Kazuma do end up winning this match. Team LLPW. And far be it from me to say that they're contemplating a trios title to set themselves apart. This is the kind of match to do it. In a weird way, I was disappointed Nabeno didn't do a somersault flip and fall short 10 feet. She didn't do any of that. This was perfectly fine. In the next match, it was the UWA tag titles on the line. And why this is important, and we'll get into this when we go the classics on AJW Destiny, because we just entered 94. What we see here is LCO, Mita and Shimoda, the UWA tag champions, taking on Gen Yukari, the Peacock, and Miki Honda. Okay? A good match. I wouldn't say it's an exciting match, but it was fine. It was acceptable. And what we got here is Mita and Shimoda, now 7 months, just about, into their post-Hokuto run with LCO. Because Hokuto, for all intents and purposes, is retired from AJW. She's in CMLL on a extreme part-time deal. We see her on this show and AJW on commentary Much like in the sense of Jaguar Yokota, Devil Masami, Lioness Asuka, who we haven't seen, which would be a bigger dialogue, is Chigusa Nagayo. She is not on commentary. It's the other people, the other stars of the past, if you will. Mita Shimoda hit the big assisted springboard splash, followed by Mita doing the suicide crossbody that they became famous for. Honda and Yukari do end up taking the fall, and LCO retain the titles. And we move on to another interpromotional match, and I'm going through this pretty quick, but trust me when I say the matches were all basically nothing, and they're not worth your time. I cannot sit here and tell you that anything outside the main event was above a 0 out of 3 recommendation scale. If you're familiar with that scale, what it means is 1 is worth a watch, 2 is recommended, 3 is fucking turn this shit on now. Okay? No match was even worth a watch, besides the words I'm saying to you now. So we move on. It's Megumi Kudo. She defeats Yasha Kurenai. It's very much in the realm of your Kurenai matches. She beats her ass on the forefront, uses some weaponry, brawl on the outside, then Kudo gets the comeback and puts her away quick. Fair enough? Okay. Saito and Tateno defeats Double Inoue. Now, it naturally has to end in a roll-up, but this was the best I'd seen Tateno in a number of months. Her against Kyoko Inoue and Takako was very reminiscent of her late 80s run, where it was like her, Yumi Ogura, and company going up against Bull Nakano and getting their ass kicked, but they were doing some high-end speed shit, right? Much like in the sense that we see Kandori work, where unless they're up against AJW wrestlers, it doesn't hit the same way, right? It's very delayed. A lot of things are very hold heavy. A lot of things are slow, okay? But in this match, because Tateno was thrown up against there, against people like Kyoko and Takako that work a lot faster, especially compared to the contemporaries of LLPW, Tateno worked better. And Harley Saito, thank God she has better gear for once. This was actually like tight to her skin a little bit. Looked not like she was wearing shower curtains, if you catch my drift. She looked more presentable as a wrestler, and the match came across like that. But again, can't say I recommend this match. Okay? Semi-main event. Okay. So we've seen the Aja Kong Combat Toyota match. We've seen the Eagle Sawai Aja Kong match. So there's your HAW connection there. Now it's Combat Toyota Eagle Sawai. On the surface, you'd say, okay, it's Powerhouse FMW against Powerhouse LLPW. Surely, they'll have at least a Hoss match. Not so much, guys. So if you remember in our last episode and two, Eagle Sawai is against Kandori for the LLPW title. That thing that she never wears, that you rarely see. Well, Sawai did an ankle injury to have her look strong coming out of the match, in which she lost. The match was boring, it was grounded, not good. Well, what happens here with Combat Toyota is very much the same. Eagle Sawai sells the ankle, sells the leg, and Combat Toyota does not know how to work in any other way other than how she's been taught. It's a harsh reality that us as sports players and athletes stick to one style that we've been taught, and we're so afraid to change and to adjust to the game. I can't tell you how many times I've been in bowling tournaments where I know I'm throwing a piss-poor game, right? The mechanics are off. I know they're off, but I'm still standing in the same place knowing I'm not going to be able to hit that on this day. Well, a good player will go, okay, if I'm 2 boards right, I'm going to throw to where I think it's going to go, but I know my body is going to throw it somewhere else. So it's 2 boards right. I stand an extra 2 boards left to where I know the ball will end up with my poor style that day. That's a good sports player. That's what they do. If I'm not throwing it where I need to, then I'm going to throw it where I truly am, right? Well, on this day of Combat Toei and Eagle Sawai, they did not do that. What they did was, I'm going to hit you on the ground, I'm going to stay on the ground, and we're going to do some shoulder blocks, and then call it a day in 20 minutes. This was garbage. And this is a case where I fully understand now why so many people watch Eagle Sawai matches of the past. I know she's awesome. I know she's capable of so much more. And yet, time and time again, when she's put up against other big women, other hosses, it sucks. Kansai, Toyota, Kong, they're all bad. Kandori, I'll throw her in there too. Bull Nakano, they're all the same match. They hit the mat, do some holds, and then they do shoulder blocks and call it a day after X amount of time that they're given. They're terrible. They're awful. They're boring. Fucking skip them. I'm sick of this. Eagle Sawai cannot wrestle against people similar in size to her. She can't do it. She doesn't do it. There's so much holding her back, or it's the agent of her matches or her ideas. Whatever the reason, they don't work. And until I see otherwise, I'm going to look at these matches going forward going, God, we got to suffer through another one of these? Bad. They're bad. Combat Toyota gets the win, and we call it a day. Eagle Sawai in the mud. She is not good. She got put over, kind of, in the AJW feuds with the multi-man matches, but she's been given nothing in the tags, she's been given nothing in the singles, and they've been poor performance after poor performance after poor performance. Okay? So now, I said that Shinobu Kandori should have lost Eagle Sawai. Well, now, a month and 2 later, after seeing these performances, I'm tired of them. No wonder they didn't give her the title right away. She doesn't deserve it. She's doing terrible. She's a bad wrestler in 93 and 94. She has all the intangibles and looks and feel of a main eventer, and yet she does not deliver. Eagle Sawai is overrated in these 2 years. I understand. I have the context and I have the deliverance. She does not get the job done, and I'm tired of it. I'm very disappointed as a fan because I love Eagle Sawai. I love her. I love everything about her and what she brings to the table, but she doesn't get the job done. You know who does get the job done? Mickey Honda. And she's a fucking mid-carder who shouldn't be in the main event because she doesn't have the intangibles to be a main eventer. So what does LLPW have as their options? They have a broken down Rumi Kazuma who's stuck in a BDSM gimmick after losing to Akira Hokuto. They have Kandori, who's in top feuds, but she won't job to anybody unless they're in AJW. So what do? This promotion is screwed right now. They have no people that can conceivably take these top spots. Nobody. And this is someone who believes and sees potential main events in certain aspects and certain people, but they're not delivering. This is a very unique case of a promotion that, despite whatever booking it is, or whatever politicking they have, the results and the people giving you those results are uninspiring. So who do you have left? Tateno hasn't really been there. She's had her ups and downs. Kandori's your biggest star. It's without question. LLPW has a problem in their main event. It's only Kandori. And I speculated early on that it's because she wouldn't do jobs. And I do believe that. I believe she wouldn't do jobs. But what's come out of this is, I'm not saying Kandori's right. What I am saying is, the people that could be in these positions haven't proven to me that they're capable of even being at her level. Or at a level similar to take LLPW further. That's a problem. That's a very, very unique, different issue that we don't talk about in wrestling a whole lot. I mean, I kind of mentioned that in my TJPW reviews with the difference between like Yuka and Miyu Yamashita compared to the rest of the roster. Can the people that they supposedly put over take the roster further? And you have to make a decision at some point to take that risk if they get to that point. So let's move on as I take some rum. To the chain match. Chains around the wrists. It's a dog collar match, but in 1994. Bull Nakano of AJW, months away, less than that even, to signing and going to the WWF full-time against Shinobu Kandori, the, for all intents and purposes, owner and booker woman of LLPW. She came off 1993 after a banner year with some of the greatest matches you'll ever see in joshi history against Akira Hokuto. Now, if you want to argue that, oh, well, it was Akira Hokuto in 93, of course she put on bangers. Well, I'm sorry. The biggest matches were against Shinobu Kandori. Okay? And whether you want to put some of her exploits in 1990, 91, 92, ahead or behind her, okay. I mean, I'm willing to play ball a little bit, but this is now at least the third straight year with Shinobu Kandori within, in, and booked into the biggest joshi match of the year. Bull Nakano and Shinobu Kandori, in all context and built to this match, started about January and February of earlier this year. And they ran an angle last month, leading into Kandori's injured eye, which we talked about in the last episode, for a brawl. And going into this match, Kandori's eye still injured. Now, I will go to the July 18th, 1993 Observer newsletter, where it talks about some July 4th AJW Grand Prix standings. I won't talk about those. What I will talk about is Bull Nakano is out of action with an injury, which may or may not be an angle for July 14th. On July 11th at the LLPW show, which we did not cover, it's a house show, in Chino, Japan, Nagano, with a capacity of 500, so we're talking like lower-end Stardom numbers here. There was a battle royal with Yashikura and I winning. There was a main event with Rumi Kazuma and Kandori defeating Harley Saito and Mizuki Endo. On July 11th at the LLPW show, Shinobu Kandori, who faces Bull in a chain match, quote-unquote, accidentally was kicked in the eye by tag partner Rumi Kazuma, who faces Bull in a chain match, went berserk, and destroyed Mizuki Endo with an armbar and sold the eye huge, which was an angle to work an injury for the big match. Mr. Dave Meltzer, I have to correct you. I know that time flows differently in 1994. I understand, but we just watched that June show in which Kandori was already selling the eye injury with the eye patch, in which they brawled around the arena. So this has been an angle going on for well over a month, and they continually go back to this eye injury, working it into the eventual chain match that we will see here on this show. Combat Toyota of FMW appeared on the show and did a stare down the aisle with Eagle Sawai, and the two were held apart by the other women after Eagle's match, after issuing challenges over the PA to build up their meeting on July 14th. So, what we have here is, on this July 11th, just days before their biggest show of the year, LLPW decided to run another angle with Bull Nakano and Shinobu Kandori. But they also did a stare-down pull-apart brawl with the Eagle Sawai and Combat Toyota, their main event and semi-main, in front of a capacity of 500. This is what I was talking about the last one. They waited too long to do these angles for their biggest show of the year. They need to do these at Korakuen. They need to do these at shows in Tokyo to get that crowd to travel. I have no issue with doing an extra angle at a house show in Nagano, Japan, outside. Okay? But these are their main angles that they're doing. That I had at the top of the cast, or near the top, that if LLPW really went balls to the wall and had a better idea of their timing, that when they ran these angles, could they have done them 2 or 3 months in advance and kept the heat to get people to go to the show in July? I think that's a tough question to answer exactly and match it up to the timing. Is the difference in timing too long where people forget? Is it better to do it closer to the date? I mean, we saw them doing close to the date, and they sold out this arena of 10,000. You know, so obviously that's an success for what they built the arena to. Okay, what I was unable to confirm was how fast they sold these tickets. I could not confirm how many of these were walk-ups, how many of these were in the final weekend leading to the show. Not able to confirm that. And I think that's a big, important factor when talking about ticket sales is, did they sell out immediately? Or did they sell out late? And then you start talking about how many tickets they could have, should have, would have sold, right? I am the belief for this particular show, and the evidence that I was able to find, limited as they be, that they did not do a good enough job building this show prior to the tickets being on sale. It was simply built up as the biggest show of the year, and then when they saw the ticket sales were bad, and I honestly believe that this Kandori Nakano match was built to the end of the year. Their big show in let's say November. Okay? But as soon as they found out Nakano was going to be unavailable after the summer, they had to book it straight and fast. So, obviously, there's some handcuffs there. There's some context to take into account of why they built it the way they did. However, even with that, and I know you're handcuffed by arena bookings and timing. For this show, I think they could have done 12,000. I think they could have done that. They get a bigger arena in the Tokyo area. I think they could have done about 3,000 to 4,000 more. Because that Bull Nakano Shinobu Kandori match coming off the heels of essentially the Akira Hokuto feud and both of those wrestlers being so tied to them in some capacity, especially Kandori around this time, that this was the second biggest match in joshi that they could have put on. So I digress. Move on to the August 8th Observer episode, or Observer newsletter episode. And this is coming off the heels of this show. And there's an angle done in JWP and AJW which could have great effects on LLPW going forward. And that involves Chigusa Nagayo. They're doing an angle where she's starting her own promotion. Okay? And Chigusa will have her own group of wrestlers, and one being Kaoru. All caps. Infernal Kaoru, if you're listening to those AJW classics. She's the first signee, guys. And they will work against the regulars in interpromotional matches in particularly JWP and AJW. LLPW is not involved in the biggest women's star in history starting her own promotion. That's a big deal. That is a major deal. And for Kaoru to be the first person to be involved with her, that makes Kaoru a big, important star out of the gate. And for her to have been involved in AJW the last couple of years, and CMLL, which has ties to AJW, Kaoru's a big number 2. She's been elevated. And yes, there is a factor that she could be the one getting falls, and Chigusa's the main focus, as she should be. But this also brings up the point I talked about on AJW Classics, where it was that Saint Final Battle, where you see Megumi Kodo and Aja Kong going at it. Who's in commentary? In tears. Just like Nagayo and company was in years prior. Jaguar Yokota. 1995's not too long off. And with Nagayo and Jaguar Yokota coming out of retirement and starting their own things, that does not bode well for LLPW. Kandori and other people have to get to work in getting Eagle Sawai and whomever over the top to start drawing some crowds, start drawing some interest. It's not working. It's Kandori and nobody. They need more stars. They need to establish more stars. So side tangent done. Let's talk about this fucking match. Because I've been at this for 40 minutes and blowing off what could be one of the greatest joshi matches of all time. Okay? One of the greatest women's matches of all time. It's Shinobu Kandori against Bull Nakano at the Tokyo Coliseum, a sold-out crowd, July 14th, 1994. They go 22 minutes. It's a fucking chain match. They built this up maybe in 3 weeks. You know, they did a couple angles. They had some tie-ins. I won't let people fool you, okay? I've seen the context. I've seen it now. Yes, there was teases in January and February. But it wasn't this huge deal on shows that they had to do time and time again. This isn't your weekly television angle. This was absolutely a case of Nakano's leaving and now we got to pay it off immediately. But with the result makes it super interesting. Did they think that Bull Nakano could come back and put Kandori over? I know that spoils the ending, but that's the big question. So these two brawl. I mean, let's take a step back. The entrances are immaculate. They're great. Larger than life figures. Very important to have. And because they rush this angle so fast, if there's one thing Kandori continues to be phenomenal at, it's her having that aura and feel that when she attacks her opponent, the match is all that matters. And you're hot. This crowd was finally alive for the first time in this entire show. They step back, they get in their corners, Nakano and Kandori take their entrance gear off, and we're off to the races. It's a brawl around the arena for 5 to 7 minutes. It's electric. They're involving all kinds of fans and weapons in different parts of the arena to really exemplify what they're doing. It's a walk and brawl in 1994, okay? They're not jumping off and flipping off scaffolds, all right? We're not doing that. What we are doing is picking up guardrails, trying to ram it into their opponent's shoulder that they've been working on for 10 minutes, okay? That's what we're doing. Bull Nakano wraps this chain around her fist, and let's not forget about this Kandori eye injury that she's been pulling for 2 months. I'm sure it was just a shiner that she picked up like weeks and weeks and weeks ago that now she's just trying to protect. Well, Nakano has this chain, and it's just a pop to the face, and boom! That shit explodes off Kandori. She is bleeding hard way, and it wasn't even that hard. But she's bleeding, the visuals are all there. It's the opposite of Kandori Hokuto from the year prior. Okay? Where Hokuto was the one on the defense, bleeding buckets, crimson mask, and it's Kandori on top of her. Well, it's Bull goddamn Nakano on her ass. And she's just doing everything she can to fend her off. Because if there's one person in the joshi scene right now, in women's wrestling, in wrestling, that can put the hurting on Shinobu Kandori, this shooter, this legit fighter, it's Bull fucking Nakano. This was awesome. It was such a believable beatdown and a correct take on characters that this is what so much of modern joshi is missing. Like, I am not one of those guys that thinks that modern joshi is missing so much of the past. I don't. I think a lot of it's better, especially in modern Stardom. Even in TJPW main events, I think the wrestling is generally better. But when it comes to angles and the hate and the viscerosity that goes through these matches, that's where the modern stuff lacks. I'm watching Bull Nakano and Kandori beat the shit out of each other and pummel and bleed. And they have this chain around them. And it just makes me look at these fucking ice ribbon quitting prominence hardcore pussy matches and going, you guys are just doing shit. Bull Nakano and Kandori were not doing shit. It was, how can I make this look like we're in a fight, we're in a brawl, we're trying to hurt each other. Guys, they went for one pinfall apiece through the entire match. What is that match reminiscent of? Well, it's Maya Yuki against Julia. Now, do I think Julia and Maya Yuki got to this level? I don't. Because first of all, there was a winner in this one, not in that one. Probably because of politics mixed with kayfabe. And that's how they wanted it. If we were going towards a result in that Yuki-Julia match, maybe I'll look back on this one differently, but in terms of Nakano Kandori, you know, I mean, in the context of what I'm watching it, I thought Nakano was dead to rights, going to WWF, and was going to do the job. Well, Kandori's got that eye injury, and she's bleeding everywhere, and we get halfway through this match, and her eye is starting to close like a 6th round boxing match against Apollo Creed. Okay, there's your Rocky reference. All right, guys. Yeah, I've seen the movies. Wonder if Kandori had seen the movies at these time. Only some of the most popular things that ever released in the 80s and 90s. Okay? Well, Kandori's eyes closing. She's fighting back. She's swinging. She's trying to get everything she can against Nakano. She's put in sleepers, and she can't hold it because her face is swelling. And it's legit, too. You see it. It's fucking swelling. It's incredible. This is when the realism really plays a role in the professional wrestling. And Kandori just continues to sell this thing as time goes on. Nakano's putting the beating on her, and I'm going to skip to the end here because it's a lot of just wild brawling. And Nakano hits her super finisher, the flipping leg drop with the fucking chain across her calf, lands right on Kandori's face, and pins her 1, 2, 3. Kandori sells the shit out of this thing. Bull Nakano sells it like she's been in the biggest brawl of her life. Guys, I love that Dump Matsumoto Chigusa Nagayo hair match. I think this is better. This has eclipsed it. We're getting to the point now in history where I'm now looking at the 1985, 84, 88, those mid-80s era matches. And I still think it's hard to beat the Chigusa Nagayo Devil Masami match. But I think now I have my second that has. That's this one. Bull Nakano, Shinobu Kandori, LLPW. The greatest LLPW match in history at this point in mid 5 stars. Full 5. Full 5 stars. Okay, guys? It's one of those matches that you should watch immediately. Okay? And you will see a true brawl. People looked at Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa hardcore. Okay? They're a little cute death match. No. It is not like this. It's not. This match, even the build, as small as it was and short as it was, it got the job done so much better because of the Kandori eye injury had so much to do with this and the success that it put it over the top. Bull Nakano, Shinobu Kandori, July 94, LLPW, is one of the greatest women's matches of all time. And I don't think that's debatable. And I want to hear more people talking about this match. I really do. This is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And there was a reason why on Bull Nakano's retirement show that she was reminiscent of this match in particular. It's one of the greatest matches of her career. And let's talk about Shinobu Kandori for a quick minute. It's the 3rd year in a row minimum that I've seen this woman have the hottest feud in women's wrestling history result in possibly the match of the year. Okay? Now, do you want to argue that perhaps Shinobu Kandori is the one women's wrestler that left the most money on the table because she was not willing to job enough, was not willing to get involved, maybe didn't have the true wrestler spirit? Sure, I'll hear you out. I'm not there yet in her history. I'm still learning. But I'm 3 years in a row now of her being involved in the greatest things in women's wrestling history. Trish Stratus, Lita, get out of here. I'm not hearing it. They had their one little match on Raw. Okay. And yes, it's the biggest company in the world at the time. They didn't have the impact, okay, of what Shinobu Kandori has done in these 3 years. I've already said Akira Hokuto is the greatest women's wrestler of all time at this point in time. Okay? And I love me some Dump Matsumoto, Chigusa Nagayo. Hell, I love me some Jumping Bomb Angels. Okay? But Akira Hokuto, with what she was doing and what she was able to accomplish in her number of years, despite injury, is unprecedented. Okay? And as I go through the next few years, that could change. Absolutely. I'm willing to admit it. I'm going with the context of what I'm seeing on this journey and my learning experience and the context of what's happening. Okay? I still hold Dump Matsumoto as a top 10. I still hold Jaguar Yokota as probably the greatest wrestler that has lived in women's wrestling. But Chigusa Nagayo and Akira Hokuto are a step above the rest. And Aja Kong's not there yet. Okay? I know a lot of people have Aja Kong as 1. I haven't seen it yet. It certainly isn't through 93, and it certainly isn't to this point in 94 that I've seen. I'm so curious, and I'm so excited to see how so many of these wrestlers play out, and what they mean to the business, and what they mean to my fandom. But right now, Kandori is right up there. And I'm wondering what happens to her post a lot of these feuds and matches. What's left? Because there's definitely feuds on the table for her. Kandori has Nagayo and company coming back to wrestling. Jaguar Yokota. There's some money to be made here for Kandori. Let's see if she hops on it. I'm not totally spoiling myself on the obvious, but I want to see what happens. I want to see what she does. What does she do with her career? Or does she just kind of pack it in and call it a day? Has she done, in her mind, has she done enough work? Is that enough work for a Hall of Fame career? I'm willing to see it play out. This has been LLPW, episode 23. Looking forward to what's happening next time. See ya.